I'm Anika Gupta, and I'm joined by Nitesh Shah and Mubin Tahir. Nuclear is back on the agenda. It's clean, reliable, and investable. So why is nuclear energy back on the menu?
Global energy needs are rapidly increasing, and we need more of it in every form. Demand for electricity in particular is rising due to artificial intelligence, AI, and data center needs. In fact, their needs are likely to double in the next 5 years. Nuclear energy as a low greenhouse gas emission solution is gaining a lot of traction, and political opposition to it is thawing away. In the US, the Inflation Reduction Act, while it may be scaled back for renewable sources of energy, its support for nuclear remains largely intact. In the European Union, nuclear forms part of the green taxonomy, paving the way for higher levels of investment relative to other traditional forms of energy.
So a single jelly bean of uranium has the same energy content as a ton of coal. So if the world's energy needs are rising rapidly, then here's a fuel source that can give us energy in abundance. Now, when you use that uranium in a nuclear reactor, you get electricity that is creating virtually no emissions. So you have an energy source that is clean, that is cheap, and it's reliable. And that's indeed the challenge that the world is looking to grapple with. Can we sustainably meet the world's rapidly rising energy needs? And among all the options on the menu, nuclear is a very exciting one.
Interesting. So what are the structural drivers of this renaissance?
So artificial intelligence and data centers are energy hungry and are putting a strain on the grid infrastructure. Innovating technology firms are keen to get away from reliance on the grid infrastructure by using small modular reactors, nuclear reactors, to provide electricity and pipe it directly into their data centers and their usage. The International Energy Agency believed by 2040, SMRs, the small modular reactors, could account for about 10% of all nuclear energy provided at that point. The positive news for the nuclear industry is that more and more investors are seeing nuclear as investable because of SMRs. Additionally, of the 52 nuclear reactors that have been under construction since 2017, 48 are either of Chinese or Russian design. There's a clear vulnerability that the world has now recognized in this supply chain. And governments around the world are scrambling to get more and more investment and their own construction of their own designs in nuclear in their own countries.
Yes, that's exactly right. So it's useful to look at it from the perspective of two main pillars. First, what are governments doing? Because their policies really pave the way for the industry to grow. And governments are really stepping up their policy support for nuclear energy. In 2024, 31 countries at the United Nations agreed to triple global nuclear capacity by 2050. And this included prominent names like the US and France, very prominent countries in the nuclear energy space. In 2025, the US went further with President Trump's executive orders, and the executive orders said that the US will quadruple its nuclear capacity by 2050. And other countries are making their own announcements. For almost 3 decades, France wasn't necessarily expanding its nuclear capacity, but now they're building new reactors. China is an important name because at the turn of the millennium, China didn't really have a big nuclear footprint, but over the last 15 years particularly, they've increased their nuclear capacity by 5x in 15 years. And that creates a blueprint for other countries to follow. So that's pillar number one, what are governments doing? The second pillar relates to what big tech companies are doing, because particularly since 2024, we've seen all the big tech companies that are developing data centers, as Nitesh said, data centers will require a lot of energy. They're now beginning to think, well, we need to power these data centers as well. So from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and most recently Meta, among others, they're all announcing deals on nuclear energy to power their data centers going forward. So those are the two main pillars in our view: government support and big tech joining. And going forward, we expect more governments will continue to announce their policy support in this space, and probably more tech companies will enter this space. And together, these two forces will continue to advance this very exciting nuclear energy renaissance.
It's really interesting. So how does WisdomTree achieve purity of exposure to the nuclear value chain?
So at WisdomTree, when it comes to the uranium and nuclear energy value chain, we look, as I said, the value chain. So we look across the value chain, and this has three main categories. The first category is upstream. So upstream typically refers to uranium miners, the fuel that produces nuclear energy. This is also the largest category in the value chain. The second category refers to midstream companies. Now, midstream companies are those companies that are involved in providing the products and services to the industry. This can be things like fuel conversion, enrichment, but also making the components like turbines and safety equipment for nuclear power plants. The third category is that of innovators. This is an interesting one because these are the companies developing advanced technologies like small modular reactors. And they warrant a place in the value chain because they're creating some very interesting cutting edge innovations in this space. Now that's the value chain, and that helps us capture the full opportunity set. But we at WisdomTree also recognize that the businesses in the value chain can have differing various types of business models, if you like, in the sense that an upstream company can be a pure play nuclear stock because they're predominantly exposed to uranium mining. A midstream business, however, might be a bit more diversified because they might have customers in different industries. Still very important for the nuclear industry because they're making all the components, they're providing the services. And innovators, some of them, they might not be generating revenues yet. So while we do still look at revenue exposure as a way to consider which stocks to include in the strategy and how to weight them, we also recognize these nuances in the various categories. So overall, what investors get is a smart, carefully curated exposure across the entire uranium and nuclear energy value chain that captures the full opportunity set here.
Thank you so much, Nitesh and Mubin, for your thoughts on nuclear energy.